It's funny being here today. I'm not one for putting my face on things, but I'm just enjoying the sun. If you see any of my content, not much of it, but if you've seen any of it, you see that most of them, either like post pictures, video clips, or reels, are mostly along the themes of mental health, to do with mental health. And that's because I've devoted nearly a decade trying to understand the intricacies of living with a mental health disorder. So this will be kind of like my intro into putting it on social media. But what gave me the courage, I will say, is hoping that it will be of some use somewhere and somebody else might find this worthwhile and think, so that's why I do that or do this. Mental health is so diverse, so different, and sometimes I've learned difficult to diagnose. But I will like to say this. I live in a society whereby mental health disorders are diagnosable. And I know there are a lot of communities where this is not feasible, where people might be deemed to be difficult, unruly, selfish, bitter, when all it could be the dysfunction within their selves, within their own bodies, within their own living embodiment. And how sad is that? That if this could be the reason why people might label you a difficult person, an unpleasant person, cause could just be to do with your makeup or how you are created or how life shaped you from birth. I ask any of you if you have a car, a bike, kitchen equipment that is faulty, you don't immediately shun them, no matter how, or shun them or stop using them or throw them away, no matter how difficult it is. You will find a way, if it's of use to you, to repair whatever is wrong with these inanimate objects. And that is why I am talking about this. I am no spring chicken, as you can see from my gray hair. I've been around a while and I have lived within this body that I am talking to you from. And not until now, as I sit in front of you on the 9th of April 2025, do I have plausible reason, rational answer as to why I am the way I am. And I would like to share it today. I'd like to share it to anyone who's interested, but more specifically to anybody from an African nation, and to get them to understand certain ambiguities in life. And maybe that would help along the way. In March 2025, after comprehensive, prolonged assessment, I was diagnosed as having autism. The two things that occurred when this was delivered to me after all the assessments, it was I started crying. My heart was thumping. Autism. These are words you hear in books. Autism spectrum. These are words that bring up a specific picture in your mind's eye if you're candid with yourself. But at the same time, I was elated. I was happy. I was glad. Me as a human being, me as all these flesh, bones, cells, neurons, I have an explanation for why I do certain things. So, in this short clip, I just want to talk about three identifying traits of somebody who has autism, which, if you are not aware of, could label you as a difficult person to people that know you or don't know you, people that you meet along your walks in life, and then all that paints a picture of who you are. I will try in forthcoming videos explain why I'm taking this journey. I'm taking it because I wish somebody had spoken to me when I was that young child growing up and said to me, "Do you know you might be behaving this way because so, 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 and so?" Nobody, I didn't have that opportunity. So, as basic as this might be, bear with me. And in the following videos, I will tell them in story format how things come across, how I presented as a person with autism, but who didn't know it. So I'm putting a thank you out there to the assessment team in the autistic department who painstakingly governed my mood, my words, my actions, and was able to come up with a diagnosis. I'm going to be putting this online, um, just putting it there for archival purposes, for me to have a record of, and for me to be able to gauge the change since knowing that I'm autistic. There are three identifying features of autism. Let me just point this. This is not my research. These three things I'm going to mention, I learned from a psychiatrist called Kojo Safo. And he mentioned three specific things that as a newly diagnosed autistic, having a late diagnosis in life, diagnosis, are some of the things that might be seem so commonplace, but are very, very impactful when you are trying to live in a world where there could said to be two types of people: the neurotypical, which is people with the normal affects, the normal behaviors, which many people accept or and view as acceptable way of behavior, and there are the neurodivergents, which I believe I'm one of them, because a lot of people have called me odd. Not necessarily. For example, on my YouTube page, I have put my name as Fola the Maverick, not because I am highfalutin or putting myself out there as this wonderful person, but because a line manager of mine just said, "Do you know you are a maverick? I don't understand you." And then my response to her, "I don't understand myself either." So I'm not taking on um, ownership of these three identifying features, but I'm taking ownership of it from a qualified psychiatrist. And because it mirrored a lot of what happened in my life. One of the first points that Kojo mentioned about anyone that is diagnosed with autism is, and number one is extreme predictability. It's very difficult for anybody. Don't get me wrong. There's a wide spectrum, but I'm just talking about anything that is similar to me. Is so in terms of predictability. For example, I live in what is called social housing in Britain. I have never moved from there. And in my culture, a sign of progress that you've achieved is that you move from one locality for one type of accommodation to another to showcase success. And whether you like it or not, social housing is always seen to be, or say deemed to be, on the on the poverty part of living. When you say you live in social houses, there's a connotation to there's a negative connotation to it. Let me just put it like that. But for me as a person, I find it difficult to make change. I find it difficult to, I might have the capabilities, I might have the assets, but I will, in one way or the other, I'll talk myself from making that change because viscerally, I cannot cope with it. I cannot cope with the feelings inside me to make these changes. And what I realized is that not everybody feels like this, but I'm now realizing that I'm feeling like this because I'm autistic. That is one of the things. The element of predictability, there's a positive element to it. For example, my daughter would know for sure that I am where I'm supposed to be. She would know for sure that my telephone number would never change. She will know for sure, or she can make decisions to the point that this is what I'll be having for supper. She knows that I don't like my cup moved from a particular place in the kitchen to another area of the kitchen. And that leads me into the second characteristics that could identify one as being autistic. Now I'll put this in terms of the workplace. Anybody who is a person that is autistic is not comfortable with change, not comfortable with change at all. Imagine it. I'm a professional qualified librarian. As the head of department, most of my roles are centralized around providing a particular type of service. I cannot, or I'm not going to say I cannot, when I was working, could not tolerate the internal feelings when a teacher shifts a workshop. It's a usual normal request. Why can't a teacher shift a workshop? It could be that something happened. There's an extended time to the lesson she's planning, but I could not accept that. I remember many a time I've worked in libraries for nearly 25 years. Many a time I have quarreled with colleagues, about the change. I mean, I will do it, but it's not something that I will do in a smooth manner for either party. And the only way that I could do this without upsetting my equilibrium was to voice how I was feeling. I suppose you could call me a high functioning autistic. That's a terminology. And within an environment where you have to function highly, being an autistic person could be your downfall because you find it so difficult to adapt to anything that is not routine in your environment. So that is the second characteristic that Dr. Kojo Safo spoke about. And another characteristic that he did mention is that autistic always have a problem with sleep, insomnia. And I'm going to link this to another clip that I will make in the future. Previous to taking time off work, I had been diagnosed as having depression. And on the basis of that, for 30 years, I have been on psychotic tablet medication. And 2023, I stopped 17 medications that I was on because to me, I knew there was something more, there's something different about me. That's not to remove the fact that I could have been depression, but because I've had traumas in life, but there hadn't been a definite diagnosis or assessment of a particular condition. So that is one of the problems that I loathe labeling it a problem. I more or less prefer to label it a characteristic. But when you are autistic and you, with it, for example, and you are in the workforce, your limitations would label you externally as difficult, quarrelsome, a troublemaker, argumentative. But all you are doing as the individual is trying to make your inner self feel comfortable. You know, when I think about this, I do feel like sobbing, like crying, but I have just got to accept that that was my lot in life. I'm going to say something here. There were people's lot in life to be slaves, and they paved the way for people like me to have a voice. I hope I'm not too crass in saying that, but what I'm trying to say is that my pains, my frustrations, my struggles could be because what I'm doing now is what I'm meant to do. So that's my path in life. As an African, I am British Nigerian, and I have not met anyone within that environment who could give me an understanding of what having a mental illness is. And most behaviors are labeled a sufferer as a difficult person. So I'm very glad this happened to me. I'm very glad I'm a Liberian. I'm very glad that I can collate things. But that's the positive aspect of my topics. And the final and third characteristic or trait or symptom that an autistic person could suffer from is having a very hard time recognizing what people mean or being cautious in how you talk to people or in what you say. I will give you an example. Many years ago, this stock has stuck with me for decades because of the impact it had on people. Even then, I didn't have the capability. Even when I said it and people were aghast that that came out of my mouth, I'm like, but what? But this, yeah, but that is what the case is. And let me give you an idea of what it is. I went to visit my brother and his wife, and there were some pictures on the table when we were eating of her when the wife was at school when they met. And they were showing this to us. I think it's something of an anniversary. And I was looking at it, and she had a lot of makeup on. And I said to the group, "My God, you applied makeup like you do, like the prostitutes on the street do." Even just saying it now, I'm tripping over myself. But then the aghast, the shock on my brother's face, the shock on his wife's face, even then, and I'm talking about the feelings within, I didn't feel anything wrong. I didn't, the intent wasn't to hurt her. The intent was just to say, oh, maybe choose your type of makeup. But I didn't have that. And this is just a one off I'm giving as an example. My life has been the saying of inappropriate things and wondering why are people upset. But this diagnosis in 2025 is making me now I feel less, I feel empathy for my brother and his wife. And I also have empathy for myself because I couldn't understand why people were terribly upset with me. And on the back of that, to not make it just a what do you call it? A flippant diagnosis or assessment or description of what autism is, I'll now go back into the brain. When our brain, this brain of ours, has machinery in it that learns how to behave and not to behave, how it mirrors what we're supposed to do and gives us signals how to behave. And I'm going to mention three. One is the amygdala. The amygdala is more or less like a sanctuary, a guide, a guard on how to tell our bodies to react or behave or to make decisions. No, not make decisions, or how to react or how to keep safe. How to keep safe. As an autistic person, if your amygdala is enlarged or is has forefront in the brain's mechanism, you will always have an anxiety driven mode of behavior, so that what you have as your cautious or as your air marking feature of the brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, is more or less like your parents or for example, if you're religious, the Bible telling you how or not to behave, and it you rationalize and you make the correct decisions. But if it's impacted either at birth or through development, you forget the amygdala, which is a safety mechanism in your brain, pushes the prefrontal cortex back and says, this is an action that gave you pleasure or that made you feel secure in the past. And this is the action you should take. And you do. For example, the reward system. If you have an obesity or you have a weight problem, you will always want to go for the sweet things. And that's because something in your brain is telling you, just take it, drink it. You're used to it. It'll make you feel good. And you do. And when that does happen, the part of your brain, the rational part of your brain, who is trying to put you road to on the road of how to behave in a narrow and sensible way, loses its power to the amygdala, who's saying, I'm keeping her safe. So you use it to where you are. So that is the second part of the brain that could be affected for autism. Excuse me, I just begged to anyone living with autism. And the third part of the brain is the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is the two different parts, the right and left side of our brain. If during development in your mother's womb or changes in the brain due to chemical issues or life events, they don't work properly together. Remember, let me give you an example. Know that the different parts of our brain work together to make us a whole. If their functions are diluted or damaged in a way, our body reacts in a certain way. I'm not going to go into the depth of that, but just keep that in mind. So basically, those two parts of our brain, just like the wheels of a bicycle, if one doesn't work properly or one is wobbling, even if the one in the front works properly, you are not going to have a smooth ride on the bike. You're going to have to struggle hard to keep up, to do things, to keep that bike on the pathway without falling over. And that is the essence of the corpus callosum. So those three parts, I reiterate: the amygdala, the sensory, the person that keeps you safe; the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that says to you, no, you do not do this. This is the right way. This is the way that will lead you to greatness, or it will lead you to down a rotten path if you take it. But gets overridden by the amygdala because it has a very powerful focus. What is the focus? To keep you safe as a human being. And the safe area of safeness is are the feelings that you feel in your body, and you go with that. And the third as part of your brain that could be impacted is the corpus callosum. Now, all this I learned while being off work. All these areas of the brain I investigated, researched, because I just could not understand who I was. So that's why I bring it to you. And I'm happy that I can. Um, because many people, I'm sure, have lost the reality of who they are because they don't understand their internal self. And I hope that this could be of use to someone. I've spoken longer than I intended to. Well, I'll just leave it here because I don't want to go on. But all I'm talking about is new to me as it is to you. So, and in May 2025, I'll be going for the lately diagnosed autism workshop. So I'll be talking more about that. To round this up, there's one thing that an autistic person could be suffering from, and it's something called masking. I don't know much about it, but basically, what that does, because you don't feel right in your body, I'm sure, man, anyway, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but just for myself. Masking is when you have like an imposter syndrome. Whatever you do, you don't feel you did the right thing. You feel that, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Okay, let me smile to this person this way, or let me lower my voice, or you speak in a higher pitched voice because you think you are making everybody happy, or you are the fun of the party. But in reality, you are a very quiet person. But you presume that is the face that you're supposed to present. I'm learning to speak quietly. I was usually the life of the party, and I could talk. Okay, maybe I'm talking a lot now, but you know what I mean. So today, the 9th of April, I, Fola, am going to please invite you to watch my content. And I'm hoping that from your comments, I can also learn more about autism, learn more about mental health, and find a way to help others in their understanding. You have a nice day until my next video. And I will try and post one video a week to be consistent, because that is another issue we talk about in terms of mental health and autism in my next video. Thank you.